Our research is about the access to justice issues experienced by women from Guyana who are seeking protection from domestic violence.
El objetivo de nuestro trabajo fue rastrear cómo las relaciones de dominación moldean la vida de las mujeres que han sufrido violencia doméstica cuando buscan protección en la justicia, tanto en Guyana como en Canadá al solicitar refugio, y cómo tales mujeres se han relacionado con los complejos institucionales y a la vez cómo esos complejos institucionales han moldeado sus vidas y la vida de quienes han experimentado y vivido la violencia. Utilizamos una metodología que se llama etnografía institucional, que es una herramienta de análisis feminista desarrollada por la famosa socióloga canadiense Dorothy Smith. Sin embargo, la amplia literatura sobre esta metodología está principalmente disponible en inglés y no ha sido aún extensamente trabajada en América Latina. La etnografía institucional identifica lo que se llama o se conoce como una problemática, que es un desajuste entre lo que las mujeres en este caso viven en la realidad de su día a día, por un lado, y la abstracción que el régimen institucional, es decir, la justicia, tanto en Guyana como en Canadá, la policía, las organizaciones no gubernamentales, etc., hace de ellas a través de relaciones de control o relaciones de dominación. ¿Qué son las relaciones de dominación? Son prioridades institucionales que regulan y organizan el poder en las sociedades capitalistas actuales en las cuales vivimos.
We look at this through two specific processes. First, when they seek protection from the state of Guyana through the Domestic Violence Act, and second, when they seek protection by applying for refugee status in Canada. Guyana's Domestic Violence Act allows a domestic violence victim to apply to a magistrate for a protection order against her abuser. If the abuser does not follow the protection order, the abuser risks getting charged by the police with breaching the order. The frontline workers that I talked to said that sometimes the process worked for some women who were able to successfully get what they wanted under the law. But other times, there were problems with some police officers following the proper processes set up by the law and by policies. These stories from frontline workers suggest that even though everyone should be able to get protection through the law, it actually depends on a number of things specific to the situation, such as whether the police officer that the woman contacts wants to help her and has the skills, knowledge, and resources to do so, whether she lives in a rural area, or whether her abuser is wealthy or influential. Now let's shift our attention to Canada. Canada offers protection to refugees and allows them to remain in Canada if they meet certain legal requirements. So if a woman is not able to get protection from domestic violence in Guyana, she might escape to Canada and apply for refugee status there. But according to Canada's Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, she needs to prove, among other things, that the state of Guyana is unwilling or unable to provide her with protection. We found that for these cases, the second most common reason for denying a refugee claim was because the adjudicator at the Immigration and Refugee Board had found that the refugee claimant would be able to get protection from the state of Guyana. The law says that it doesn't matter if the state is trying to provide protection. What matters is that they are actually able to provide effective protection. But in those cases that I'm talking about, the adjudicators found that the state of Guyana was making efforts to provide protection without actually focusing on the actual results of these efforts. So despite the evidence that the women were not able to get help from the police, the adjudicator still found that the women would be able to get protection if they were to be sent back to Guyana. The law also says that the adjudicator must look at the specific situation of the individual for each case. However, we found that some adjudicators used nearly identical wording in multiple cases when describing state protection in Guyana. It was almost as though they were using a cookie-cutter template.
Producimos entonces un mapa de las tramas del poder de los complejos institucionales de Guyana y de Canadá que deberían brindar protección legal a las mujeres víctimas de violencia que buscan estatus como refugiadas en Canadá. Al observar el desajuste entre lo que la ley dice y lo que sucede en la vida real, La etnografía institucional nos brinda una herramienta práctica para estudiar el acceso a la justicia y creemos que vale la pena explorar este tema más a fondo.